Hi guys, welcome back to VEGBATE, where I take common excuses made against veganism and I respond to them. So today I'm going to talk about the excuse that eggs don't kill. So Aaron Jonas has already made a really good video explaining the egg industry, so I'm going to link that up there in the cards. And you should probably watch it to understand what really happens, because when somebody's making that statement, they don't understand what happens. And it's not like it's a thing that only happens at one or two farms. This is something that is a standard farming practice. It is practiced all over the world because it has to be. So something that you have to keep in mind is that egg-laying hens have been genetically modified to lay more than 300 eggs a year. Naturally, before we humans started messing with hens and chickens, they used to only lay 12 eggs just like us. So it requires a lot of energy for a chicken to lay an egg. Sometimes the egg can even break in her cloaca, which can cause her a lot of pain. Chickens also lose calcium when they lay an egg. And before humans started messing with chickens, they would eat their eggs to restore their calcium loss. But nowadays we feed them calcium-filled food to make up for that calcium loss, so they don't feel the need to eat their egg. So the death of chickens, how does that happen from eggs? Because eggs are typically unfertilized. They do not contain a baby fetus, chick fetus. They don't contain a baby chick fetus in there, so that's not the problem. That is not, there's no death involved in that egg that you were buying. Kind of. This is where people need to think outside the box and think of how that egg got there and the production of it and what happened. When chickens are bred into the egg industry, they are being bred to make more egg-laying hens. There's a 50% chance that instead of a female being born, a male will be born. There is no use for male chicks in the egg industry because they do not lay eggs. Some people are like, well, aren't those chicks, those male chicks, aren't they used for meat? Like, you know, the males are for meat, the females are for eggs? No. The reason why male chicks cannot be used for meat is because the chicks that are used in the poultry industry, they are specifically genetically modified to produce more meat. And this male chick in the egg industry, it hasn't been genetically modified to do that because they were hoping a female was going to be born, so they genetically modified them specifically to produce more eggs. But if a male is born, he can't produce eggs, so he's useless. There's no reason to keep him alive because he can't produce eggs and he can't produce enough meat, so he's just going to be a waste of resources. And there might be the odd tiny farm somewhere that actually keeps these male chicks and raises them for meat, even though they produce no meat compared to the chicks raised in the poultry industry now. But keep in mind, 95% of farms are factory farms. They are not those small little nice little family farms. And even the family farms typically kill their male chicks because it's a waste of resources and the farmer is trying to make as much profit as possible. He doesn't want to waste his feed on feeding this chicken that takes forever to grow and that isn't going to even produce enough meat to make a big enough profit. So typically anywhere you were getting your eggs from, they had to, somewhere along the lines, female chicks were trying to be bred, male chicks were born, and those male chicks had to be killed. Now let's talk about the killing methods. The chicks can be suffocated in bags, they can be gassed with CO2, or they can be macerated, which is being ground alive. And this all has to happen typically everywhere around the world before 72 hours of life. Different governments have different rules towards certain things, like how old they have to be killed or how to go about specific killing measures. I've read up on Canada's methods for raising each type of animal and how they're killing them and transporting them. So I'm very familiar with Canadian laws and regulations for that, but if you are from somewhere else in the world, you're going to want to look up on your government's website how they are treating their animals, how they are killing them, and how they are transporting them, so you know exactly what they're doing. But pretty much no matter where you are in the world, they're going to be following very similar practices. Everyone's like, oh, Canada's so different from the States, but not really. So now you know what happens to the male chicks, so let's talk about what happens to the female chicks. The tips of their beaks are typically cut off, cauterized off, burned off. There's different methods for that because they don't want the chick to peck at other chicks and cause cannibalism. But cannibalism only happens when chicks or chickens or hens are in stressful conditions, because when hens are used as pets, this behavior isn't viewed because they're not in a stressful environment. Something a lot of people find surprising is what free range actually is versus what we think it is. No cages seems like the perfect thing, you know, they're free range, they can go wherever they want, they can be on the lovely green grass. The reality is the only laws to regulate free range means they're not in cages. So instead of being in a bunch of cages in a barn, they can just be free in a barn, but there's still thousands of them shoved in there. There's a lot more diseases that actually happen when they are free range compared to in cages. And I'm gonna link another video up in the cards that kind of explains cage versus free range. So something else that happens with the hens after they have their beaks cut off, sometimes parts of their feet are cut off. They may also be starved in a process called forced molting, where you are removing food and water sources from the hen. When a hen is molting, they don't actually lay eggs, they just lose their feathers. And molting naturally happens. I'm not talking about natural molting here, I'm talking about induced and forced molting. Molting is spread up by starving. That makes the feather loss happen faster. That means that they can go back to normal faster and they can lay eggs again faster. When their egg production increases, farmers give back the food and water. So this is either called forced molting or induced molting. So you can look that up on your government's website to see the specific regulations with that. I know for Canada personally, because I've looked it up, forced molting is practiced, but the regulations for Canada is you cannot remove food or water. So instead of doing that, they have other methods such as lighting. So I mean, that's a little better than actually starving them, but it's still really stressful for the hens' bodies to make eggs faster than what they should be. So when a hen's egg production decreases, not due to molting, they are sent to slaughter because they are no use to the egg industry anymore. They're not making them enough profit. So what about backyard eggs? I'm gonna link a video up in the cards again about backyard eggs that the vegan activist has made. It's really, I believe it's quite a short video, but it explains what backyard eggs do and the problem with them still. I'm just going to briefly talk about that because that's something a lot of people are confused about. When, say, PETA posts a picture of baby chicks being killed for eggs, for the egg industry, people comment and they're like, this is why I have backyard eggs, this is why I buy free range. They're not realizing that those baby chicks being killed still happens with free range and with backyard hens. That killing happens probably before you even buy the hens. So when you're buying hens, when you have your own backyard hens, you're buying them probably from the egg industry or a farmer or somewhere like that, or maybe you're rescuing them. But for those hens to even be brought into existence, their brothers were killed. That happened before you got them. You cannot prevent that. So saying you have backyard hens, it's like you still support that. It doesn't stop that from happening at all, sadly. And sorry, you're still exploiting your hens, even if they're in the backyard. You're using them purposely for food. That's really their only use to you, unless they're actually your pet. But if they were your pet, I don't think you would want to be eating their menstruations. I'm pretty sure you would. And you know, that egg isn't meant for you to eat, and there's a lot of negative health consequences of eating eggs, like so many. Like eggs and dairy are at the top of the list of foods to not eat. They're definitely worse than meat. And luckily there is alternatives to eggs. You can make tofu scramble with turmeric and black salt, and black salt is this magical salt that makes things smell and taste like eggs. Yeah, if you like eggs, there's your solution. The vegan egg was also created a little while ago. All of the reviews I've heard say it's amazing. Even PewDiePie says it's amazing. I'm gonna link Marzia's video up in the cards. So yeah, those are options you can try out. So this is the end of the video, and I hope it gave you some information. So I'll see you guys in another VEGBATE episode.